This is the time of year when we're picking our olives, and we're picking them right now. It's usually the beginning of November or mid-November, and we have various varieties of olives on our property. We have Moraiolo Lecchino and Frantoio. And we pick the olives by just taking the branch, stripping the olives down, then they're going to be taken to the mill. This is a tremendous production year in Umbria. We have about 30% more this year. They're going to be milling about 120,000 quintale of olives, and if you consider a quintale is 100 kilo. So the production is up 30 to 35% from last year. Umbria has about 27,000 hectares of olive groves. One of the greatest producers of the 20 regions of Italy. 27,000 hectares is about 56,000 acres. There are 27,000 producers of olive oil in Umbria. About 6% of all the olives are organic. Alain Ducasse, the greatest chef in Europe, says the best olive oil is that of Umbria. The region of the hills between Assisi and Spoleto, and that's because of the large amount of the Moraiolo olive, which gives our oil this wonderful green color that it should have. It has very low acidity, and it has a nice retrobite, which is what you want to look for in a good olive oil. Martina's there picking, and she's got a tree which we'd call not a great tree because the olives on this tree are sort of like cherries. In other words, you have to reach up and pick one or two at a time. Generally, when you pick olives, you want to have a nice laden branch, and you just strip it right down. Our trees are much younger than the trees of Central Italy, Greece, Turkey, where you see these huge gnarled trunks, because those are trees which are thousands of years old, centuries and centuries old. And here in Umbria, since we're subject now and then to a hard frost, the trees are younger. But when you talk about the age of the olive tree, you have to talk about whether you mean above ground growth or low ground growth. If you look at this tree right here, there seems to be three trunks. They're coming from the same roots. So at one point, these olive groves were planted by a person we call Povero Gianetto, because in Umbria, when a farmer dies, ever after, everybody calls him Povero or Povera. So Gianetto built our farmhouse in the early 60s. He planted these olive groves, and at some point, there was probably a hard frost. The above ground growth was cut down, and so from the roots are coming these three trees now. So when you're aging or talking about age of olive trees, you have to talk about what's above the ground and what's below, because these are coming up from the same roots. Now, looking at these olives, this tree actually, many of the olives on this were not yet ripe or mature, because they haven't reached yet that black dark color, which most of the olives we've picked have. But they'll go to the mill anyway. So what's the difference in black and green olives? It's just that the green is less mature, less ripe. Maybe less sun exposure here. There's wonderful uses of olive oil in Umbrian culture. One, our farm neighbor Pepper told us, was that when she was a child, they often had gelone, which means chilblains. And that can happen when you expose your extremities to direct heat when they're very cold. And of course, the farmhouses weren't heated. So when the children would come in the winter, after taking the sheep down into the woods to graze, why were they grazing them in the woods? The hay crop was finished. So they'd take them into the woods to eat the ivy off the trees, because there was nothing left to feed the sheep. And these children would go into the woods with wooden clogs carved by their grandparents, woolen socks made by their grandmother. They'd be freezing when they'd come home, so they'd sit right in front of the fire. They'd develop gelone, which means your feet turn red, they start to itch. So what would their mothers do before putting them to bed? Rub their feet with olive oil, and then put wool socks on them, and put them into a warm bed heated with a bed warmer. So olive oil was used against gelone. Peppa also told me when she was little, olive oil was rubbed into her hair in the morning a little bit, because when she came home from school, her mother would comb her hair with a thick comb, and if she picked up lice at school, she'd be able to find them using the thick comb and the hair that had the sheen of the olive oil on it. Peppa also can keep off the evil eye. If someone is jealous of you, they might hex you, give you the malocchio. Well, Peppa puts on a plate olive oil and pours water on it. And depending how the olive oil moves, she can read what's happened to you, who's hexed you, what she has to do to take the hex off. So olive oil is also used to protect people, if you will. It has many, many traditions in culture. And of course, you know, it has tradition since biblical times. It's a symbol of peace because Adam knew that the waters, not Adam, excuse me, Noah knew the waters had receded when the dove flew back to the ark with an olive branch in his beak, thus showing that peace was made between God and man. And in Assisi, the city of world peace, so declared by Pope Paul II in 1982, an olive branch has a lot of significance. We're all given olive branches on Palm Sunday in Italian churches because we've all pruned our olive trees in March, Easter time. If no one has palm trees, we have a lot of olive branches. So they're given to us on Palm Sunday. Pino's stripping down the outer branch, not the outer branches, pardon me. He says it's the full outer branches which are going to get sun exposure and give the fruit. The inner branches, what do? They take away the energy from the tree that the tree needs to put out to the producing branches. So as Pino's picking olives, he's doing a mini pruning. He's picking off lightweight branches in the center that really are doing nothing for the tree except taking away energy from the tree and will never produce olives. Everything's used in farm culture. So these will go to our donkeys and our goats. The goats especially really enjoy olive trees. In fact, that's why the raising of goats is not common in Umbria or in areas of land where people work their land, because goats will eat anything. We have a couple goats now, but they're in pens. So they'll get some of their olive trees, but not by standing up on the tree and stripping down the branches as they wish. They'll get a few branches only in November when we're picking our olives and getting rid of the non-productive branches. Today we have these nets under our trees made of nylon, and we've obviously had to buy the nets, and that's going to facilitate the picking, because as we pick the olives, some are going to get out of our hands, not get into the bucket and get under the ground. In the old days, which means for me 1970, when we moved here and picked our olives for the first time, after you picked the olives, you were on the ground getting every olive you could left on the ground into your bucket to take to the mill to be pressed into olive oil. So now this is going to facilitate. You can see Pino over here is gathering the netting together, and he's pushing all the olives together. He'll sort of funnel them together, and then they'll go into a basket. So this is going to save lots of time of being under this tree, picking up all these olives which fell as we picked. And you can see, you know, for a farm person, counting on everything he grew as food for the family, that's a lot of olive oil right there, and it's not going to be wasted. So we'll be finishing our picking today. It's taken us 2 days to pick the olives from our trees, which are about 60 to 80 trees. Then we will go right to the mill. We're now trying to find a mill which is pressing organic olives of small quantity, because we only have 60 or 80 trees, because we want our olive oil. We don't want olive oil mixed with other producers and so forth. So once we find the mill that's going to do this for us and do it cold press with no heat application, we'll take it to the mill. It's got to be within 2 days. You don't want your olives to heat up in sacks, because that's going to alter the flavor of the olive oil. Take it into the mill. It's pressed within a couple hours. It comes home in a big steel vat we have for it. Then we put it into bottles, and it takes about 3 days to go from olives on the tree to olive oil drizzled on toasted bread and the best brisket in the world.